I let go of the need to prevent people suffering, and what fell away was the self, because that was the identity. So this video is about how the self dropped here. Throughout my spiritual process, I've had lots of gradual shifts, some moments that felt like very deep moments. I've talked about that in previous videos. But on January the 28th, this year, 2025, the self fully dropped. And that was quite a big deal. I've never experienced such a big shift before. I had big shifts before, but this was huge. It was very life-changing because before there was this part always that felt like a me, that felt like a self, that felt like identified with the self. And through that felt a little bit separate from life in some way. And it was just a sensation. And around 2 p.m. in the afternoon on the 28th, that sensation fell away. And in the days before that, I'd had tastes or a glimpse of intense emptiness, which at some moments felt quite terrifying actually, even though it was okay. But it felt scary. And then the day before this happened, so that was the 27th, I had this fear of death that was really there for the whole day. And I've had that as glimpses before at that point. And those glimpses were quite intense, I can tell you. But this was just this medium fear, like the whole time, fear of dying. And it felt like a full body fear. And it was something that I was able to sit with, inquire into, and see where the resistance was. I tend to use a technique where I then try to find words for that resistance, formulate it into a sentence. For example, I need to be productive, or I need to die, or something like that. And then I tend to sit with that sentence that creates that resistance and sort of penetrate into the heart of it. And then let it go. And when this sort of fear of death fell, I felt a lot better. And then on the 28th, I felt this profound sense of emptiness the whole day. But it wasn't as scary anymore because it didn't have this fear of death. I also noticed that if I interpret it more lightly, like more into aliveness or emptiness or something like that, instead of death or nothingness or something like that, that I just felt better. Oh, it's just aliveness, right? It's just consciousness or something like that. So I interpreted it a little bit better, and then I felt that that the sensations were still there, but I wasn't experiencing that in a negative way. Then on the 28th, I felt the sensation in my heart, in my heart center, my heart chakra, and this sensation felt intense. And I looked into it, and it was something I have found over and over again with myself, and that's the feeling of not being good enough. So I sat with that, and then I asked why. I also have this video, this 5 times why technique, which really helped me in the past, and I did that here as well. So I asked, why am I not good enough? And I've asked this before and I never got an answer. And then suddenly I got an answer. Because people are still suffering. And I asked, why is it bad that people are still suffering? And it said, because you need to prevent suffering. And this needing to, or must do, right? That's always where the resistance is, because it's no choice. I felt into that I need to prevent people from suffering. And after a little while, it fell away. And with that, the self fell away. And then I really had to get used to that, because it felt quite good. But definitely some fear came up in the first week. It was quite intense. That fear was mostly like a fear of deepening, or like, because the shift was so big, I was like, if it goes any deeper, I just lose everything. I just lose cognition or consciousness, and I just, but that wasn't the case at all. And there was this sense, not maybe of deepening, but that there was still, let's say, conditioning being cleared off. And that was totally fine. And still some Kundalini energy, which is totally fine. I had to really get used to this, because I felt at the beginning this sense of missing something, right? You miss the sense of self, which you've always had. And you miss a sort of sense of orientation in where to go with the feelings in the body, and where to go with where to land, let's say. And there's nowhere to land anymore, because this is just where it is all the time. And overall, it's a couple of months later now, 2.5 months later. I feel really good, and I feel really clear. I feel really productive, really energetic. Like, I have a lot of energy in the day. I feel great. And I notice a lot less Kundalini energy. Only when something maybe wants to come up, a little bit Kundalini energy comes with it. And it's a joy to be alive. But there's obviously no one to do it. So I noticed that my suffering is definitely down. It's way more easy for me to see where I'm suffering. If I'm creating suffering inside, it's way more easy for me to see that. And I also have noticed that I need to watch what input I get. So if some things enter without, let's say, filter. So if there's suffering around me, or I hear about people suffering, or I hear about death, diseases, things like that, I know that there's let's say, or war or something like that. If I read the news, basically, there's a possibility that things enter a little bit harder, that I feel suffering more, the suffering of other people, and that I can feel it. So if I want to feel good, I really need to watch what I take in, but I don't need to feel good. It's okay if I sometimes am exposed to suffering, that's fine. But yeah, at the beginning, definitely first week, but also the weeks after, it was very clear to me, like Angelo Dilullo says, this is unwantable, right? The drop of self. I agree with that. Like, you want to have this oneness, that's amazing. But the drop of the self is, even though it sort of completes the loop in a way, that's how I feel it. It is kind of something that you didn't set out. You set out to get rid of suffering. You set out to maybe be happier, to be more peaceful, to be more mindful, to solve some of your problems. Or sort of life ignites this journey in you, right? I think all of them are things that were something that's played up here. But losing the sense of self, it's a sensation which I wouldn't say that having a sense of self is better than no sense of self or something like that. I wouldn't say that, because things come in more raw, more unfiltered. Yeah, it does have some. It's like a different feeling. It's like, it's not that no sense of self is it's like way more happy than no sense of self or something like that, than having a sense of self. Having a sense of self is totally fine. It was never the problem. It just fell away as a result of the suffering I was carrying. I let go of the suffering, and with that, this bubble of the sense of self. I talk about that in one of my last videos, like dissolving the bubbles. Like these bubbles that you're living in, including the personal bubble or the self bubble, they are consisting of these beliefs. So if you deconstruct the beliefs, like I did, then the bubbles also fall away. I let go of the need to prevent people suffering, and what fell away was the self, because that was the identity, or that was, let's say, the identity that was formed. And that's no problem, of course. But is it so important to drop the sense of self because it's seen to be like this ultimate thing in spirituality? And I would say, no, it's not about that. I think it's about allowing life to do what life wants to do and being with what is. And if that's for you a journey where you end up dropping the sense of self, that's fine. If it's for you where you, I don't know, help people wherever they are, or if it's for you to do something which contributes to the economy or something like that, that's totally fine. Like for me, somehow there was this tendency to want to be a mystic or to meditate and to improve myself, to work on myself endlessly. That was like my identity for myself as well. And below that was the sense of I'm not good enough, so I need to work on myself. And below that was the need to prevent suffering, because that's why I thought that I was not good enough, because people were still suffering, right? So it's very interesting that in order to not suffer yourself, you need to be okay with the suffering that's in the world. And that's how it was here. And again, dropping the sense of self, I think it's life-changing, it's incredible, but it's not the most important thing ever. I think, again, that the most important thing ever is to, you could say, surrender or be with your natural expression of life, of the world, etc. And it's not yours, of course, it's life, allowing life to flow through you, you could say, as this vehicle of the body mind. That's the most important thing. And then what shape that takes on, maybe that's meditation, maybe that's being a spiritual teacher, but maybe it's also being, a psychologist, a construction worker, or a banker, a lawyer, or a doctor, or a guy on the street. So, who knows? It's not about that. If you smile to people, then you change their world, So I wouldn't focus on or thinking that all your problems are gone. They're just unfiltered when you lose the sense of self. They're not gone, right? And is it even a problem, or is that a perception, right? That's also a case. But this resistance that builds up these bubbles, I think that the suffering, letting go of that suffering is more important. I would rate it that you would say surrendering to life's flow, number one, most important thing, will make you most happy, will make you most at ease, will solve your choice and decision problems. But the second thing, maybe if I would rate it, is letting go of the suffering, because that changes how much suffering you bring to others as well. And then third, maybe if you're on this path, if you're doing this thing, if you're letting go of suffering, if you're surrendering to life's flow, and somehow these shifts wants to happen, like it happened here, okay, then go all the way. Then deconstruct your identity so far that there is no self left. Totally fine. But I wouldn't say that should be your number one priority on the spiritual path. I think your number one priority, again, should be just being with what is and allowing this path to unfold for you how it's supposed to be for you in this life. And I know, again, there is no self, but we're talking about this form, right? There's still this form. So how do I describe the form without saying you and me? That doesn't make sense. I say here sometimes, but yeah, here and there is still duality, right? How can we speak without creating a concept? It's impossible. So I still say you and me, even though there is no you and me. There's just this one flow. But if you have influence, right, or influence just arises on your circumstances, then it would be beautiful if there's an arising of, I can just surrender to this flow. That's my main message. And if you want to be coached by me, I offer a free coaching call. In the description, there's a link where you can book a call straight to my agenda. And I love speaking to my clients and to different people that just want to do one session. So if you want to spar with me or see my perspective on, I've been a coach for 7 years now, and then I'm on this beautiful spiritual path for 15 years plus. Much love to you. Thank you so much for allowing me to share and for watching my stuff. I appreciate you. And if you have any questions for me, you can also drop them in the comments. I'm here for you. And if you like my content, please like and subscribe, because that helps the algorithm share this stuff with more people. Much love. Bye.